The dimly lit cantina aboard the mercenary vessel Vrexel's Fong buzzed with tension. A kaleidoscope of alien species filled the space, but the usual drunken revelry was missing. Instead, hushed whispers and furtive glances punctuated the uneasy silence. At the head of a table sat Commander Kralk, his scaly blue skin shimmering faintly under the flickering light panels. His 4 eyes narrowed as he listened to the conversation unfolding around him. Deathworlders, a wiry insectoid mercenary named Shalix hissed, his mandibles clicking nervously. I tell you, I saw one once. A human soldier. We ambushed their ship on Drexer. Thought it was easy prey. They didn't even need weapons to fight back. Kralk snorted, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. Humans? Bah. Another overhyped species trying to inflate their reputation. You think their soldiers are gods because they survived a skirmish. He leaned forward, talons clinking against his metallic cup. I've fought a dozen species tougher than humans. Those stories are just propaganda. Shalix shuddered, his compound eyes darting around the room. Propaganda doesn't explain how one soldier took out half my crew with nothing but a blade and his bare hands. A burly reptilian mercenary growled, slamming his fist on the table. Enough with your ghost stories. Humans are fragile. Weak bones, soft skin, and short lifespans. This fear is beneath us. Before Shalix could retort, a piercing alarm blared throughout the ship. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into a momentary darkness before stabilizing. Everyone froze. Kralk stood, his imposing figure towering over the group. Status report. He barked into his communicator. A crackling voice replied. Commander, we've intercepted a distress signal. The Deathworlder Special Forces humans are en route. They're coming for the diplomat we captured. A collective hiss and growl filled the room. Several mercenaries exchanged panicked looks, and even the burly reptilian seemed to flinch. Kralk's lips curled into a snarl. They're just soldiers. Nothing more. We outnumber them 20 to 1, and this ship is fortified. Prepare the defenses and stop behaving like frightened hatchlings. The crew reluctantly dispersed, but their movements were sluggish, weighed down by an unspoken dread. Kralk strode to the bridge, his mind racing. The human's reputation was absurd, yet he couldn't deny the reaction of his crew. Stories of Deathworlder Special Forces were pervasive in mercenary circles. Tales of their adaptability, their refusal to die, and their uncanny ability to turn any situation to their advantage. But Kralk wasn't one to believe in legends. By the time he reached the bridge, his second-in-command, a feline-like alien named Lyris, was already coordinating the defense grid. Commander, she said, her fur bristling, we've detected multiple breaches in the lower decks. Small, precise, no life signs, but equipment is failing. Sabotage, Kralk muttered. His claws tapped against the console as he studied the reports. Power fluctuations, doors malfunctioning, surveillance feeds going dark. It was as if the humans were everywhere and nowhere at once. Bring all units to defensive positions. Seal off the breached areas. They'll have to come through choke points if they want to reach us, he ordered. Yes, Commander, Lyris replied, but there was a tremor in her voice. Hours passed, and the ship grew eerily quiet. Too quiet. The usual hum of machinery seemed subdued, as if even the vessel itself feared the coming storm. Kralk watched the monitors, scanning for any sign of the enemy. Every shadow on the screen seemed to move. Report, he demanded. One of the technicians, a pale amphibian, stammered. Sir, WEVE lost contact with Deck 4. The squad we sent to investigate hasn't reported back. Kralk's jaw tightened. Send another team. Minutes later, screams echoed through the comms, abruptly cut off. Commander, Lyris whispered, they're picking us off one by one. Kralk slammed his fist against the console. Enough! They're playing games, trying to scare us. They're flesh and blood like the rest of us. Deploy sentry drones and prepare for a counterattack. But even as he spoke, a creeping doubt gnawed at him. The humans weren't fighting like any other species he'd encountered. They didn't march in with overwhelming force or rely on superior technology. Instead, they exploited weaknesses, psychological and tactical. Another alarm blared. This time, it wasn't a power failure or a breach. The message was simple and chilling: we're here. The message repeated on every screen, written in the galactic standard language. The mercenaries froze. Even Kralk felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "Let them come," he growled, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. In the depths of the ship, unseen and unstoppable, the Deathworlder's special forces moved closer, silent as shadows, relentless as predators. And the mercenaries, for all their bluster, were learning the truth behind the legends they had dismissed. End of Chapter 1. The mercenaries scrambled through the dimly lit corridors of Rexel's Fong, their confidence eroding with every passing second. The silence was oppressive, punctuated only by the distant hum of failing machinery. Kralk stalked through the control room, issuing commands in clipped, angry tones, but even his voice carried an edge of unease. "Seal all access points to the bridge," he barked, watching his crew hastily comply. "Deploy the sentry drones in overlapping patrol patterns. They won't get far." Despite the orders, unease rippled through the mercenaries. These Deathworlders weren't attacking head-on like most adversaries. They were ghosts, striking from the shadows and disappearing without a trace. On Deck 4, a squad of 6 mercenaries cautiously advanced, weapons drawn. Their breathing was ragged, and their claws or appendages clinked against their guns as they scanned every corner. "Keep it together," the squad leader growled. A reptilian named Zarvik, he had survived countless battles, but tonight he felt hunted. A faint sound echoed behind them. The squad spun around, weapons aimed at empty air. "Just the vents," Zarvik muttered, though his grip on his rifle tightened. Another noise, this time ahead of them. Footsteps, deliberate and slow. A bead of sweat slid down Zarvik's scaled brow. "Fan out. They're trying to." The lights flickered and went out. Darkness enveloped the squad, broken only by the faint red glow of their emergency visors. Panicked shouting erupted as something moved among them. A sharp scream tore through the comms, then silence. Kralk watched the monitor feed go dark. The squad's vitals flatlined one by one. "Another team gone," Lyris whispered, her fur bristling. "Commander, they're cutting through us like we're nothing." Kralk clenched his fists. "It's not because they're stronger. It's their tactics. They've studied us. They know how we think. Focus the drones on sweeping Deck 5. I want them flushed out." The sentry drones activated, their sleek forms humming as they patrolled the empty corridors. They detected no life forms, but occasionally one would find its system scrambled, a victim of silent sabotage. Meanwhile, in the ventilation shafts, the Deathworlder operatives moved with precision. Their suits blended with the darkness, rendering them nearly invisible. One of them, Captain Elias Ward, paused to relay orders to his team via a neural link. Keep the pressure on, Ward said, his voice calm. They're crumbling. Avoid direct engagements unless necessary. Target their systems and morale. One of his operatives chuckled softly. Think they've figured out we're in their heads yet? They will soon, Ward replied. And that's when we'll strike. Back on the bridge, the tension reached a boiling point. Reports of more lost squads poured in, punctuated by the eerie, taunting messages left behind by the humans. Leave, and you live. They're not fighting fair. One mercenary yelled, his voice high with panic. Fair? KRLK spat, whirling on him. Do you think war is fair? Get back to your post. But KRLK knew the truth. The humans were dismantling them without a single casualty on their side. Each failure fed the growing fear among his crew. And fear was something the Deathworlders knew how to wield better than any weapon. End of Chapter 2. The corridors of Rexel's Fong were a battlefield in everything but name. Debris littered the floors, lights flickered ominously, and the smell of scorched metal lingered in the recycled air. KRLK stood at the bridge's central console, his claws drumming against its surface. Reports of sabotage and disappearances continued to flood in, and the remaining mercenaries looked more like prey than warriors. Status report, he barked. Lyris, his second in command, hesitated. "Commander, we've lost contact with the teams on Deck 6 and 7. The drones sent to investigate. They're offline too." Kralk growled low in his throat. "How can they be everywhere? They're just a handful of soldiers." "They're not fighting us," Lyris said, her voice trembling. "They're hunting us." In the lower decks, chaos reigned. A group of mercenaries had barricaded themselves in a storage bay, their weapons trained on the sealed doors. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the ship's failing systems. "They'll come for us next," muttered Jorn, a wiry amphibian with wide, darting eyes. "They always do." The others glared at him, but no one contradicted the statement. They all knew the truth. The humans weren't fighting a conventional battle. They were predators, stalking their prey with precision and patience. Suddenly, the lights in the storage bay cut out, plunging the room into darkness. Panicked shouts erupted as mercenaries switched to their weapon-mounted flashlights, their beams illuminating only shadows. The doors creaked open. "No!" One mercenary screamed, opening fire wildly. The others followed suit, filling the room with the deafening roar of gunfire. When the smoke cleared, they realized they had hit nothing. The doors were still closed, untouched. Jorn dropped his weapon and bolted. He didn't care where he was going, he just had to get away. The others shouted after him, but he didn't look back. His frantic footsteps echoed through the empty corridors as he fled deeper into the ship. Jorn skidded to a halt when he rounded a corner and came face to face with a human soldier. The Deathworlders stood motionless, their face obscured by the visor of their black combat suit. Please," Jorn stammered, dropping to his knees. "I surrender. Don't kill me." The human tilted their head, almost curiously. Then they spoke, their voice calm but cold. "Leave the ship. You don't need to die." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jorn scrambled to his feet and ran back the way he came, shouting for anyone who would listen. "They're letting us go. We have to leave." Back on the bridge, Kralk's grip on the situation slipped further. "Cowards!" he roared as the comms lit up with desertion reports. "If they run, let them. We don't need them." But he knew better. The humans weren't just picking off his forces, they were dismantling the foundation of his command. Every desertion, every act of panic, was another victory for the Deathworlders. And Kralk, for all his bravado, couldn't deny the truth. The humans weren't just warriors. They were something far more dangerous. Survivors who thrived in chaos. End of Chapter 3. Kralk limped through the silent halls of Rexel's Fong. The corridors, once bustling with confident mercenaries, were empty. The ship felt like a tomb, its silence punctuated only by the distant creaks of strained metal and the faint hum of emergency power. His remaining crew had either fled or gone dark. He clutched his blaster tightly, though his claws trembled. His heart pounded against his ribs as he turned a corner, the shadows feeling alive, watching him. A predator's instinct told him he was being stalked. "Commander," came a voice over the comms. Lyris, faint and frantic. "They've breached the detention block." The diplomat, her voice cut off with a chilling hiss of static. Kralk froze, his throat tightening. "How?" he muttered to himself. These were supposed to be elite mercenaries, the best money could buy. Yet the Deathworlders had carved through them like a blade through soft flesh. A metallic clang echoed from the end of the corridor. Kralk spun, aiming his blaster, his eyes scanning the dark. "Show yourself," he bellowed, his voice cracking. Nothing, just the oppressive silence. And then he saw them. The human emerged from the shadows as if they had been part of them. Clad in black combat armor that seemed to drink in the dim light, their face was hidden behind a skull-like visor. The glow of their eyes pierced through the darkness, cold and unfeeling. They moved with a predator's grace, deliberate and silent. Kralk fired. The blaster's shot illuminated the corridor for a split second, but the figure was already gone. Another clang echoed behind him, and he whirled, firing again. "You think fear is a weapon only you can wield?" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, calm and devoid of emotion. Kralk's breath hitched. He backed away, his claws scraping the walls for support. "You're just soldiers," he growled, trying to steady his voice. "Nothing more." The humans stepped into the light, unfazed. Their movements were slow, deliberate, like a predator savoring its prey. "No," the humans said. "We are survivors. On Earth, everything tried to kill us. Our environment, our predators, even each other. You're mercenaries. We're what comes after desperation turns to evolution." Kralk fired again, but the human ducked and closed the distance with terrifying speed. A gloved hand struck his weapon aside, sending it clattering to the floor. Before Kralk could react, he was slammed against the wall, the cold, unyielding visor inches from his face. "You didn't lose this battle because we were stronger," the human said, their voice low and final. "You lost because we know how to make you afraid. And fear makes you weak." Kralk stared into the lifeless glow of the visor, his bravado crumbling. He had faced countless foes in his career, but none like this. None who could turn fear into a weapon so effortlessly. The human released him, letting him collapse to the floor. "Run," they said simply, "and tell the galaxy why Deathworlders are to be feared." As the human disappeared into the shadows, Kralk lay trembling, knowing his legend as a commander was over. End of Chapter 4.